From the Outreach Studios at the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences at Penn State, this is Weather World.
Good evening and welcome to Weather World on this Christmas Eve. I'm Marissa Ferger. We're offering you a special program this evening as we are home enjoying holiday cheer with our family and friends. And while we won't be showing you the typical Weather World Monday night forecast, we have a few Christmas-related features as gifts to you. John Neese will be here to talk about the historical roots of White Christmas. Rob Leidick will talk about how government agencies follow Santa's journey with the same tools they use to track weather. And members of the Weather World team will read you a classical Christmas Eve bedtime story that contains a Pennsylvania connection. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy some holiday fun from those of us here at Weather World.
With Christmas just a few days away, there's always plenty of speculation and anticipation about the chances that it might be snowy. It turns out that the notion of a white Christmas has interesting roots, at least partly in long-term changes in the climate. Now, here's a look at the results of a bunch of studies focusing on the Northern Hemisphere that have tried to reconstruct average temperatures going back about 1,000 years using various methods, such as tree rings. Now, there's certainly a lot of variation among the various studies, but if we sort of average all these lines, there's clearly a period starting in the 1500s when average temperatures were lower than today by a degree or two. Now, this cooler time is known as the Little Ice Age, and there's evidence that it was noticeable, especially in winter, in both Europe and America. For example, during that time in the Netherlands, canals frequently froze solid in the winter, while in the Swiss Alps, glaciers advanced and threatened villages. In England, winters were generally colder as well. In fact, there are accounts of the Thames River freezing over, something that never happens now, though that's only partly the result of changes in the climate. Closer to home, New York Harbor actually iced over during the winter of 1780, allowing people to walk from Manhattan to Staten Island. That winter was so harsh that the esteemed American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia sent out a request for weather observations to document the brutal cold. Now, the Little Ice Age ended in the early to middle 19th century, and it turns out that some of the most memorable Christmas stories were written around that time, when people had a colder and probably snowier impression of winter. For example, Clement Moore published "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" in New York in 1823, describing new fallen snow on Christmas Eve. This story is largely responsible for the modern American view of Santa Claus, including his method of transport and the number and names of his reindeer. About 20 years later, the classic "Over the River and Through the Wood" was written in Massachusetts to describe childhood memories of a Thanksgiving sleigh ride through the white and drifted snow. Around the same time, Charles Dickens wrote "A Christmas Carol," set in the bitter cold of London during the holidays, the miserly Scrooge forbidding his clerk to put more coal on the fire. And a century later, Irving Berlin's classic lyrics in the biggest pop hit of all time stirred up memories of a snowy past by dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know. In Pennsylvania, the historical probability of a white Christmas, defined as at least 1 inch of snow on the ground on December 25th, varies from about 10% in Philadelphia to more than 70% in the higher elevations of the north and west.
Aircraft, missiles, space vehicles, and Santa's sleigh. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, track it all. But it's this time of year that they get the most publicity. Children and parents want to follow that jolly journey of Santa and his reindeer. Let me give you some background on NORAD. This year is the 60th anniversary of the binational organization, a partnership between the U.S. and Canada. NORAD is charged with missions of aerospace warning and aerospace control for North America. They detect, validate, and warn of attack against North America by aircraft, missiles, and space vehicles. So how did NORAD begin tracking Santa? Well, it was actually an accident. Back on December 24, 1948, the U.S. Air Force issued a communique claiming that a radar net to the north had detected a, quote, unidentified sleigh powered by 8 reindeer at 14,000 feet heading 180 degrees. The Associated Press passed that report along to the public. It was the first time the U.S. Air Force had issued a statement about tracking Santa, but it was a one-time thing. Then in 1955, the Continental Air Defense Command, or CONAD, Operations Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, received a call, but it wasn't from the president or a military general like they normally get. It was from a young child in Colorado Springs. A Sears ad in the local paper told kids they could dial a phone number and speak to Santa Claus directly and find out where he was on his journey. But that phone number was printed in the paper incorrectly. One digit was off. Colonel Harry Schaup was answering the phones that night at CONAD and received numerous calls. Rather than hanging up on the children, he had his operators find the location of Santa Claus and reported it to every child that called in that night, and Harry became known as the Santa Colonel. That began a tradition that was carried on by NORAD when it was formed in 1958. Of course, with changing technology come changes in the way Santa is tracked. NORAD began partnering with other agencies, including NOAA, to use technologies to monitor Santa's Yuletide journey. To this day, NOAA provides tracking support using radars and satellites. They also keep watch of the North Pole for weather conditions and any unusual activity. According to NOAA, infrared sensors on GOES satellites pick up on the heat signature off of Rudolph's red nose, helping them follow Santa around the globe. Today, over 1,500 volunteers staff telephones and computers each Christmas Eve to answer 70,000 calls and 12,000 emails from children and adults in over 200 countries and territories across the globe. Live updates are posted in 7 different languages on the NORAD Track Santa website, which receives nearly 9 million visitors each year. Children can also track Santa through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This Christmas Eve, you and your family can follow Santa yourself by going to NORADSanta.org.
Reading the book The Night Before Christmas by Clement C. Moore is a Christmas Eve tradition in many homes, including my own. We here at Weather World thought it would be fun if we took the time to read that book tonight. The version we have chosen was published by Scholastic Incorporated in 1989 and was illustrated by a man named John Stephen Gurney. I had the chance to speak with Mr. Gurney earlier this month. The Bucks County native told me that he used his nieces and nephews as inspiration for the children in this book. The parents, he modeled them after his brother and sister-in-law. And most importantly, Santa Claus was inspired by a friend's father, a burly factory worker from Levittown, Pennsylvania. Mr. Gurney wanted Santa to relate to the working-class men of eastern Pennsylvania, although he admits that he exaggerated the man's belly to make him look a little more authentic as Santa Claus. If you'd like to see more of Mr. Gurney's work, you can go to his website, www.johnstephengurney.com. Thank you so much for making us a part of your Christmas Eve this evening. We'll return with more Weather World features on Wednesday night. I want to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas, and I hope that your night is as magical as the one in this book.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads.
And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. and out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter.
Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below.
When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick.
More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all.
As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof.
As I drew in my head and I was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack.
His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow.
The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly.
He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread.
He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose.
He sprang to his sleigh, to his team, gave a whistle, and away they all flew, like the down of a thistle.
But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.